It depends on the basis of removability, why the person's removable, as well as their individual circumstances, including length of time in the U.S., whether or not they have criminal convictions, and the nature of those convictions.
If you're facing deportation, do you qualify for cancellation of removal? We're going to talk to New York immigration attorney Cory Forman about that on today's episode of Ask the Lawyer. Cory, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. Glad to be here.
When a person is facing deportation, what are some routes they can take to potentially stay in the country, Cory?
Well, it depends on the person's individual circumstances. There's two main issues in every removal proceeding. The first is the person deportable? And if they are, the second question is, are they eligible for relief? Their forms of relief, depending on anyone's circumstances, include cancellation of removal. There's a 212H waiver. There's fraud waivers. It depends on the basis of removability, why the person's removable, as well as their individual circumstances, including length of time in the U.S., whether or not they have criminal convictions, and the nature of those convictions.
So, Cory, if you don't have a defense against the immigration law violation, what other options are there available?
Well, if removability is easily established, if you don't have any legal status and it's easy for the government to prove removability, you have to apply for a waiver if there's one available to you. If you're eligible for cancellation of removal, if you're eligible for a 212H waiver, if you're eligible for a fraud-based waiver, it all depends on the individual circumstances of your case and the nature of removability. If you're not eligible for a waiver, under current guidance based on current presidential administration policy, you can seek to have ICE dismiss your case as a non-priority case. And the reason they're doing that is they're trying to get rid of the insanely large immigration court backlog.
So you were talking about cancellation of removal, Cory. What are the two different types of cancellation of removal? And can a person who's accused of a crime actually use that as a defense?
Well, for one of them, yes. There's two types. One is for someone who's here with no status whatsoever. That cancellation of removal is based on the person having been here for 10 years, having the ability to show they're a person of good moral character, and most importantly, that their removal would result in the extreme and unusual hardship of a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, spouse, parent, or child. The second type of cancellation of removal is strictly for those who are lawful permanent residents, and those are for permanent residents who have been convicted of certain crimes. The qualifications there are that the person's been a green card holder for 5 years, has been in the United States for 7 years before committing the crime, and most importantly, that they have not been convicted of an aggravated felony. An aggravated felony is a type of crime that will disqualify you from not only cancellation of removal, but almost any form of relief from removal. Two very distinct kinds of cancellation of removal, but they're designated for different categories of non-citizens.
And you were just talking about extremely or exceptional and extremely unusual hardship. Tell us what that means and give us some examples of that.
Well, it means it's a little draconian in some ways because it's got to be more than a hardship because a family is ripped apart, although to me that's clearly exceptional and unusual. There's a lot of case law on the subject. It has to be exactly what it says. There has to be an exceptional and unusual hardship imposed on the qualifying relative. Oftentimes, this is going to be a financial burden, a medical burden, something to show that the person cannot possibly live in the United States without the non-citizen. You also have to show that it would be just as much of a hardship for that person to leave with the non-citizen. Why can't they go and depart the United States? Again, a lot of this is very draconian sounding, and in my opinion it is, but it is a high burden.
Well, a lot of really great information, Cory. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Tom. I appreciate it.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been Cory Forman. If you'd like to ask Cory questions about your situation, call the number you see on this video. Thanks for watching. I'm Tom Mustin for Ask the Lawyers.